Welcome to the Young Turks. I'm Anna Kasparian, Nando Vila, and Brooke Thomas joined me for hour one today. Cenk, Uygur, and John Iadarola are at the Revolution Rally in Detroit. They're also, of course, going to cover the debates. But lucky news for us, they're actually going to come in, do a live hit from the Revolution Rally, which I'm really looking forward to. So just assuming that tech works out for us, we will have Cenk and John join us later on in the show. We also have incredible stories for you. Later on, we're gonna discuss a investigative report by ProPublica Illinois that talks about affluent families in the state of Illinois, essentially doing these tricky scams in order to qualify students for financial aid that they otherwise would not qualify for. So that's a story that I might have some unpopular opinions on, but we'll see. I can't wait to talk about that. But we're gonna start off with some immigration related stories that are incredible. Like, they put me in the state of despair, because just when you think things might get better based on federal judges and the rulings that they make, you remember, oh yeah, the Trump administration likes to break the law or find loopholes, and that's exactly what we're about to talk about right now. In a San Diego court filing, the ACLU argues that the Trump administration has continued its policy of child separation even after a federal judge indicated that he could no longer separate children from their families at the borders unless these parents pose some sort of risk to the children. Now, here's what the lawyers wrote in the court filing. Lawyers wrote that one migrant lost his daughter because a US Border Patrol agent claimed that he failed to change the girl's diaper. Another migrant lost his child after a conviction on a malicious destruction of property charge with alleged damage of $5. So what the Trump administration is doing is they're finding this loophole where they're arguing, well, the parents are criminals, or the parents pose a risk or a danger to the parents, so we had to separate them. They have separated nearly 1,000 migrant children from their parents since the judge made that ruling, indicating the Trump administration could no longer do that. And I'll give you Kevin McAleenan's argument in just a minute. Of course, he's the acting head of the Department of Homeland Security. But this story is it just shows you that they don't not care about the rule of law. They genuinely think that these punitive measures will serve as a deterrent, even though they have not served as a deterrent. And besides which, deterrent aside, why are we being so incredibly cruel to these families and to these children? They're needlessly being taken away from their parents still.
Yeah, I remember when the child separation story first broke, was like last year. There was rightfully a huge amount of public outcry about it, and it was all over the news, and people were all fired up about it. And this is a classic example of how the sort of insane and frenetic news cycle plays into the hands of the Trump administration, because what they got to do is just kind of lay low, stay quiet. They get a slap on the wrist from a federal judge, and then they could just keep doing exactly the same thing. And then when the story comes back up, it's gonna be hard to drum up that same level of outrage, that same level of energy to oppose this kind of thing, because energy is limited, and people understandably get exhausted. But it just goes to show that we somehow have to oppose this just as much as we opposed child separation last year.
Absolutely.
Yeah. This is horrible. What's so frustrating about it? Of course, what is so frustrating about it? Yes, is that this is more than almost 1,000 children who are taken from their parents. Also, this is a federal judge's ruling that is just blatantly being ignored by another part of our federal government.
Exactly, 100%. And the thing that's so frustrating is, what is the big story in the media today and yesterday? Trump arguing that Baltimore is crime infested, rodent infested, right? No, your administration is crime infested. They are just skirting the laws, breaking the rules, doing it over and over again. And by the way, this will have, long-standing psychological effects on these kids. And the Trump administration, Border Patrol under the Trump administration doesn't care about doing things appropriately and keeping track of these parents so they can reunite these children later. I mean, I'll give you some more examples. One father, who lawyers say has a speech impediment, was separated from his 4-year-old son because he could not clearly answer Customs and Border Protection agents' questions. So there's absolutely no humanity in the way that they're treating these people. Cool. It's just punitive for the sake of being punitive. It's cruelty for the sake of being cruel. More than 40% of the separated children were 5 years old or younger. Children spent nearly 4 months in federal custody on average, in part because it was difficult for lawyers and caseworkers to locate their parents and assess the reason they were separated. So that goes back to the point that I was making earlier. They're not keeping track of what happens to the parents. They don't care. So what happens to the kids after that? What are they gonna do?
And it's not just the Trump administration, because at some point you can't just fall back on doing your job. Every single officer, agent who is willingly participating in this, it is not just doing your job. You are all participating in, at least very clearly, violating a federal judge's ruling, let alone this nasty cruelty. Like, just think about just that father there. Not only are you dealing with a language barrier, but a speech impediment that just for giggles, they decided we're gonna use this. Oh, you can't, you're not, oh, so we're gonna take your kid. For no reason other than it's fun, really, because what's the harm in someone not being able to understand you or not being able to communicate clearly with you that they deserve to not have their kid with them and their kid deserves that type of trauma? And then, how does this father ask questions? How does this father even start the process of getting their child back with this speech impediment, with this language barrier? It's just insanely cruel. And everybody who participates in this, down at the bottom, even if you're, because a lot of it, their excuse for a lot of these people are, they just like it. Because there's a big percentage of our country that just likes this behavior. But the other people, they say they're doing it for their pensions. They say they don't want to do it. They have to do it. It's their job. No, you all have to answer to this. I don't know if you remember, do you remember the Atlanta testings? This reminds me of the Atlanta testing scandal, and it was pretty horrible. All of those lower teachers, the lower level teachers, who all felt pressured to do something that everyone down the line knew was wrong. All of them were prosecuted.
They were not only prosecuted, they used racketeering charges.
Yes, they were with trumped up charges, absolutely, because
it was crazy.
The judges and the prosecution felt like every single one of them had a responsibility, no matter how hard it was to have your boss, all of your bosses saying, do this, it's better for the kids, it's better for the school, do this. Every single one of them had a responsibility to stand up somehow and have the courage to say no. It's even worse if you're violating a federal judge's ruling to yank children from their parents illegally.
There's, I love that you brought that up because it's a perfect story to kind of juxtapose what the consequences would be for Border Patrol agents under the Trump administration, if there will ever be consequences.
If there were a justice system, right.
Like, those were, let's keep it real, those were Black teachers in Atlanta, right? Lower level teachers who had absolutely no power whatsoever. In this case, they have the executive branch protecting them. Where do you think they're getting these orders from? So let's hear from acting Homeland Security Secretary Kevin McAleenan. He said that family separations remain, quote, extraordinarily rare and occur only when adults pose a risk to the child because of their criminal record or communicable disease, abuse, or neglect. So of the specific examples we just outlined for you guys, do any of those parents fall under those categories? Criminal record? No. Diseases? No. Abuse or neglect? No. Someone had a speech impediment and they decided to use that as an excuse to take his child away from him.
Yeah, seeing the details of this story and then seeing things like the ProPublica investigation into Border Patrol and the activities that they were doing in their secret Facebook groups, it just shows you how ingrained into the culture of the Border Patrol, the Customs and Border Patrol, this kind of thing is, this kind of culture of just criminal and absolutely cruel impunity and incompetence, really. If a Democrat wins in 2020, the challenge to reform an agency like the Border Patrol or ICE is just so immense. Like it's hard to imagine how you can reform an agency like this without really almost gutting it to burning it to the ground and starting all over again from scratch, because I mean, this is very, very deeply ingrained behavior.
So I just want to make one final point about this, because the next time you hear Trump whining and crying about how the left is making up stories about how it's a manufactured crisis, understand what the left means when they say it's a manufactured crisis at the border. Are there people in large numbers coming in seeking asylum? Yes, that is not manufactured. But the crisis, those overcrowded detention facilities where 24 people have died already, right? That is a manufactured crisis. Yeah. Trump does not need to take these children away from their parents. Trump does not need to immediately and automatically detain every single person seeking asylum. He's made that decision. This is what's happening under Trump's watch. He is manufacturing the crisis. And so what's amazing to me is you'll hear the right wing argue that they're pro-life when it comes to this whole abortion debate. They're not pro-life. Again, my mind wanders back to that autopsy report of the 16-year-old boy who died in Border Patrol custody. He died surrounded by his own vomit next to a toilet, okay? He was an unaccompanied minor who traveled, from Central America to the United States. I mean, that in and of itself is so dangerous, but he took that risk to flee for safety. And that's what we did to him. We just allowed him to die surrounded by his own vomit next to a toilet. So the next time a right winger tells you they're pro-life, bring up that autopsy, bring up the fact that 24 migrants have died under Trump's custody, and guess what? His voters love it.
They love it.
All right, let's switch gears a little bit. Let's go to a more hopeful note and talk to Cenk, who's at the Revolution rally in Detroit. Hey, Cenk, what's up?
Hey guys, how you doing? How are we all doing today, guys? All right. As you can tell, all our rowdy friends are here today. So we got about a couple hundred people here and a lot more on the way, and we're ready to go.
Nice. All right, that looks fun. I remember being in the middle of that. It's a good time. So tell me a little bit about how the rally's going so far. What kind of speakers people can look forward to hearing from. After
guys,
people stop chanting.
It is super hard to hear you.
All right, no worries. So how's the rally going so far? What kind of speakers?
Okay, I can't hear you at all. So what I'm going to do instead is tell you what's coming up tonight.
All right, sounds like what usually happens on the main show.
Right. Okay, so guys, what we're going to do here is at 6:30 for everybody who's here live, and all the members will get to see it later as well. So tyt.com/join to become a member. We're going to start our speeches. Already Abdullah Saeed is here. He ran for governor of Michigan. He's a wonderful, wonderful progressive. And we're going to have Varshini Prakash from the Sunrise Movement. We're going to have Alex Rojas from Justice Democrats. We're going to have Adam Green from PCCC. John's going to speak. I'm going to speak. Allison Hartz is going to speak. So this is a huge event. I love that all these guys showed up. We got we got a couple of folks here from Phoenix, Arizona. We got a couple of folks here from Portland, Oregon. Florida.
All over the place.
We got somebody that came in from Beijing, China. Okay, and I see my Justice Democrats out here. I see my Wolf Pack out here. I love that. And then since we have a little trouble hearing you, I'm going to hand it off to John for his expectations for the debate tonight.
Oh, okay. They're low. No. Is that what you meant? Overall? Look, for me, there are some issues that I would love to see broached at this debate, mostly because they almost never have been in any debate the Democrats have ever had for the history of the party. Last debate, I think we had one question about climate change, maybe two, and they were best described as shallow, which the ocean is not because of climate change. So I want to see that talked about, and I want to see incentives for candidates to address the issues we really care about. But I have a feeling that there's probably going to be a lot of fairly shallow questions about conflict between the candidates that doesn't really get to the ideological divide in the party right now, and that is unfortunate. Now, I could be surprised, and we have seen a lot of great people organizing at these debates to put pressure on the companies like MSNBC and CNN that are hosting them to move in the right direction. And that pressure is not going to relent. I do think, if I'm going to get specific about some of the candidates, I think the fact that in the last debates, probably the biggest newsmaker was the Kamala Harris-Biden thing. That means there's going to be a lot of candidates who are thinking, well, maybe I can get a few points in the polls and a little bit of money if I attack someone. But we're going to see. It's possible she'll do it again. It's possible someone will turn the tables on her. What I would like to see is a focus on some of the differentiating policy factors between Bernie and Warren, because they're sharing a stage. They've both said that they're not going to be fighting with each other, and I sort of get it. They've been friends for a really long time. But I think that that there's a lot of primary left, but we've already been through a bunch of months, and it's time we start digging deep on some of these candidates, start showing who the real progressives are and who just puts that label before their name every once in a while. And so hopefully we'll see that.
Yeah, and last thing I'll say on it, because I know you guys got to do the rest of the show, obviously, so is that tonight, along with Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, who I actually hope don't fight. I think that they agree on a lot of issues, and I want a united front for progressives. And I love the megaphone that they're both creating by being in the race. But I do want it to delineate a little bit, and that's why we've done this pledge. That's why all these folks are out here. The difference between them and Buttigieg and Beto O'Rourke, for example. And look, actually, Buttigieg is pretty good on money in politics. Beto O'Rourke's pretty good on a lot of different issues, but there are significant differences. And so we might all know it. If you watch the Young Turks all the time, you know it. But most of the American people have no idea what the differences are. And that's what the whole point of the debate is. And part of the reason, of course, that we did the TYT pledge. So, and I forgot to mention, there's also someone on their honeymoon that's come here. So thank you, appreciate it. Thank you. Woo! Guys, 6:30, the speeches start here tonight. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Cenk. Thank you, John. All right, that's awesome. Look, it's exciting to be in the middle of all that, I have to say.
Yeah.
And while I was in the middle of all that in Miami, it was easy to forget how much more difficult it is to be here with the smaller staff. And so we've all been working overtime here at TYT, and we do it for you guys. Thank you so much for watching. And if you're a member, you're one of the reasons why we're able to do what we do. So I just wanna let you know that the Revolution Rally will have some highlights. We'll have highlights of it toward the end of the show. But in order for you to catch all of the rally, you do need to become a member. We wanna make sure that we provide our members some extra exclusive content. So if you're not a member and you're a little concerned, maybe it's not worth it, we do have a trial option. Just go to tyt.com/trial. You can check out membership for free for about a week and then decide whether or not you like it. And then you can become a full-blown member. I'm sure you'll wanna be, because there is a lot of extra content that we provide you guys.
Stellar lineup on that rally.
Yeah.
Stellar.
All right, well, we gotta take a quick break, but when we come back, we have more news for you, including how Donald Trump's immigration policies are actually unfairly targeting American citizens, people who are born here in the United States as well. Come right back.
We hope you're enjoying this free clip from the Young Turks. If you want to get the whole show and more exclusive content while supporting independent media, become a member at tyt.com/join today. In the meantime, enjoy this free segment.
Hey guys, welcome back to TYT. Anna, Nando, and Brooke with you. All right, I'm gonna read your member comments and tweets in just a second, but before I do, first I gotta do some business. Let's talk about the Weekly. One of our newest sponsors is The Weekly on FX. I've told you a little bit about them, but I'm gonna remind you, from the New York Times, The Weekly is a new TV series in pursuit of truth, which is something we love here at TYT. Each half-hour episode features a Times journalist investigating one of the more pressing issues of the day and brings unparalleled journalism to the screen. From the collapse of the taxi medallion industry to the impact of GM's transformation into an automotive tech company, every Sunday, The Weekly tells these stories in an unforgettable way. So you can actually catch these episodes of The Weekly streaming on Hulu, and all new episodes air every Sunday night at 10 p.m. on FX, so check them out. I also want to tell you a little bit about how you can support this show. Maybe you're already a TYT member, maybe you've given donations. Well, there are lots of different options, and YouTube membership happens to be one of those options. One way you can help is by just clicking on that little join button that you see on our YouTube content, and you get extra perks, including TYT themed emojis, which you can use in the chat.
What?
Yeah, fun, right?
I want one.
Okay, we'll create one.
These are so funny.
Yeah, Jenks cracks me up.
Yeah.
I think they should have one for John where he's making that come hither stare. We use like that photo of him in promotional pictures and promotional material. I like that picture.
I gotta show you something in Slack when we go back to it.
Whoa.
Okay, let's do it. All right, and then finally, for those of you who are wondering, all right, the debate is tonight, what's going on? How's TYT gonna cover it? So we have two exciting speakers joining for the Revolution Rally in Detroit. As you guys know, if you're a member, you get to catch the entire rally whenever you want. It's archived. We will have some highlights of the rally for you at the end of this program. But again, if you want to watch all of the programming from the rally, you need to become a member. Go to tyt.com/trial so you can get a trial for about a week, and then you get to decide whether or not you want to join. Also, on Tuesday and Wednesday, so today and tomorrow, TYT will be covering the debate. Cenk and John are covering from Detroit. I will be leading here in Los Angeles. So if you want to watch live, just go to tyt.com/live to catch it. And it starts at 10 p.m. Eastern time. So we are not going to be able to stream the debate for you. But as soon as the debate is over, we're going live. We're going to cover it. We're going to give you analysis. So please check it out. All right, with that said, let's read a few of your comments. So Spaceman Spiff 50 says, hi TYT.
Nice.
Longtime member, first time shout out from Belgium. Just letting you know there is no similar channel here.
Aww. Those Belgian progressives, they need maybe TYT should open a Belgian bureau.
People, I know, I mean, we would love to.
Need some fries and some waffles.
We need
chocolate.
We need more producers.
You crazy.
Like we got the resources for it. Pork Chop Express, seeing a lot more TYT names I don't recognize in the comments makes me happy. Keep it up, Turks. And Herkel says, call it what it is, crimes against humanity, in regard to the last story we did about child separation. Absolutely.
100% correct.
All right, let's move on to the rest of the news. Undocumented immigrants aren't the only individuals who are facing punitive actions by Donald Trump and Border Patrol. In fact, we're hearing more and more stories of American-born citizens who are being profiled and targeted by Border Patrol. In some cases, they're even being detained. In one case, a man was detained for as long as 3 years. So let me give you some details on some of these migrants, and there are many of them. I'll give you a bigger picture in just a second. The Los Angeles Times actually investigated this to figure out, all right, well, how many American citizens are targeted and detained by ICE? And what they found was that ICE had released more than 1,480 people after investigating their citizenship status. In one case, a US citizen was held in immigration detention for more than 3 years. Absurd. And this is, look, it should upset anyone when you hear the stories of what's happening to migrants seeking asylum.
Yeah.
But if you're selfish, hateful toward those people, you don't want people coming in, that's fine. I mean, I disagree with you, and I will do my best not to say rude things about you on the show. But nonetheless, I mean, these punitive measures are not necessarily about immigration. It's about targeting and brutalizing people of color. It's about profiling people. So in one example, just back in March, a 9-year-old by the name of Julia Medina was detained by Border Patrol for 32 hours despite her being a US citizen. Though she's an American, Medina's family lives in Tijuana, and they cross the border each morning to get to school. On a Monday morning, CBP detained her and her 14-year-old brother Oscar, saying she didn't look like the photo in her passport. At that point, CBP said the elementary student who was questioned without her parents provided inconsistent information during her inspection. Maybe because she's
9 years old. Oh my God, she didn't pass the bar exam after going to law school.
It's so depressing.
Jesus.
The agency reportedly had no explanation for why it took 32 hours to confirm her citizenship status and release her. Though in that time, they accused her brother, who is also a US citizen, of human smuggling and tried to have him sign a document saying his sister was actually his cousin.
Oh my God, this story is so infuriating. I mean, what's really scary, I think, looking down the road even a little bit, is that like if there ever is a fascist takeover in this country, like a proper fascist takeover in this country, one of the hallmarks of fascism is that there needs to be this sort of almost paramilitary internal police that basically terrorizes what's perceived as like an internal minority. This was true in Spain, this was true in Italy, this was true in Germany in the 1930s, like the stormtroopers and all that stuff, And usually those were like bands of like young men who were just kind of displaced after the war and stuff. But I feel like here it would be the Border Patrol itself that did it. They would serve that function. They're not just terrorizing migrants that are coming across the border. They're terrorizing American citizens, often deporting even veterans who fought in wars. Like I mean, it's absolutely terrifying, infuriating. That's why any Democrat that takes power has to take Border Patrol's lawlessness very, very seriously and confront it head on. Because it's just an agency that is completely out of control.
Well, they're emboldened by this administration. The lawlessness is the rot, in the Trump administration, and it trickles down to these government agencies, and it goes beyond Border Patrol. It really is the leadership in this country and what the leadership communicates to everyone on a daily basis. I mean, this is a guy who has exploited political tensions and political and racial divisions in the country for his own political gain, right? And so he's gonna keep doing it.
Right?
Yeah, so I wanna give you a few other examples. So the agency has also, you can tell by the numbers, 1,480 according to the Los Angeles Times. They've also targeted other individuals. The Medina family, Medina was finally released, not because of, hey, we realized this was a US citizen, we should release her, but because the Mexican consulate was contacted by the mother and then they talked to US immigration authorities.
I love the Mexican consulate helping out an American citizen, they can't go to the American consulate, obviously, they're not gonna help them.
This is so crazy. So there was a man, a US citizen who had been detained and they were gonna deport him to Jamaica, even though he was born here in the United States.
There's a lot of them.
There's a lot of them.
Yeah, because the 3-year situation was a black man that they were trying to deport to Jamaica. And then we find out there was another man just back a few months ago, maybe like 6 months ago, who was born in, I think, Philadelphia and has no connection to Jamaica, who was going to be deported to Jamaica.
And I think I covered this story with you, Brooke, but do you remember Francisco Erwin Galicia?
Yeah.
So he was also detained for 3 weeks. And the Border Patrol had his birth certificate a week before they finally decided to release him. Now we're hearing more from him and what he experienced while he was detained. And he was, by the way, held with 60 other men. This is an 18-year-old, right?
He's a kid,
Yep. 60 other men and was not allowed to shower for the 23 days he was held. And by the time he was released, he lost 26 pounds.
What?
Yep.
Oh my God.
And he told the press, it was inhumane how they treated us. It got to the point where I was ready to sign a deportation paper just to not be suffering there anymore. I just needed to get out.
And that's the point. That right there, that's the exact point. And that's what happened to his little brother, who unfortunately wasn't born in the US like his older brother, and they got a 17-year-old to sign a voluntary, that shouldn't even be legal.
100%. Yeah.
And now these two brothers are split up after what happened to them on their way to a soccer event.
It's not about, we want to keep the borders safe. It's not about, we don't want undocumented immigrants coming into the country. We don't want people breaking the laws. It's about brutalizing, dehumanizing, and targeting people of color. That's all it is. And they're so unapologetic about it, even if they're US born citizens. They are so un-American, they're so punitive, so hateful. And again, the fish rots from the head down. This is Trump's leadership. This is what Trump's leadership does.
Yeah, like having more Latin American people in the US isn't inherently unsafe.
Right,
it doesn't make any sense to begin with. Yeah, but then just because people are so awful and they're so stuck on that, we have to break down how that doesn't make sense. And it's upsetting.
Well, you know who keeps us unsafe? Donald Trump. who is a giant criminal or is involved in a lot of criminal activity. So I'll make that point in this next story. So the big story this week is Donald Trump targeting Representative Elijah Cummings, and his big argument is that Elijah Cummings is the reason for crime in Baltimore. He has referred to Baltimore as infested, rodent infested, every negative word you can imagine he has used to describe Baltimore, and he's blamed it on Representative Cummings. Well, he's decided to double down on that today. And so I want to show you how he doubled down, and then I'm going to give you the reality of what's actually infested, and it's related to Trump. Take a look.
Those people are living in hell in Baltimore. They're largely African American. You have a large African American population, and they really appreciate what I'm doing, and they've let me know it. They really appreciate it. And by the way, the numbers just came out. Unemployment for African Americans is the lowest it's been, the best numbers, meaning in the history of our country, the lowest in the history of our country. But people have called from Baltimore thanking me so much because all that money that's been spent over 20 years has been stolen and wasted by people like Elijah Cummings.
So he accuses Representative Elijah Cummings of theft. He argues that Elijah Cummings is stealing from Baltimore. So just remember that every time Donald Trump decides he wants to take up his meetings at Mar-a-Lago or play golf at Mar-a-Lago, he is draining resources from the US taxpayer so he can go play around with a few balls on a course somewhere, right?
Every time he has a rally in a random city that he refuses to reimburse for police protection, he is stealing.
That's theft, right?
It's just like, it was like 2 seconds ago that the right wing was like freaking out over like, Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib for like, criticizing America. And like, it just 2 seconds later, Trump is like, well, America, it's a hell. Who would want to live there, this American city?
Of course.
He campaigned on that. Got to make it great again because it's so bad.
I mean,
that the blacks are running free.
So,
blacks.
So let's talk a little bit about crime, because Donald Trump argues that, hey, there's a lot of crime in Baltimore. And it's all Representative Cummings' fault. Okay, first of all, there is definitely issues with poverty in Baltimore, and I've made this point, before. It's not just Baltimore. There is poverty throughout the country, right? The wealth disparity, the income disparity, that gap continues to widen, and it continues to do so under Trump's leadership. And so he can be boastful about the unemployment numbers if he wants, but all it takes is one follow-up question, a little more of a deep dive into the quality of those jobs, and it tells a completely different story, a completely different picture. Wages have remained stagnant. Those jobs are part-time jobs, temporary jobs. They are not paying a living wage to the workers. And it's amazing to me that he keeps touting the economy, and his supporters just buy into it when they know, what your bills look like, what your paycheck looks like, what your financial stability looks like. The economy has definitely improved for a very small group of people in this country. And it's the top 1%, which got a $2 trillion tax cut, while taxes for other people went up, by the way, okay? So there's that, but let's talk about crime. So just to remind you, Trump tweeted the following over the weekend. Representative Elijah Cummings has been a brutal bully, shouting and screaming at the great men and women of Border Patrol about conditions at the southern border, when actually his Baltimore district is far worse and more dangerous. His district is considered the worst in the USA. As proven last week during a congressional tour, the border is clean, efficient, and well run. We all know that's not true, just very crowded. Cumming district is a disgusting rat and rodent infested mess. If he spent more time in Baltimore, maybe he could help clean up this very dangerous and filthy place. You know what has actually turned out to be a very dangerous place? Trump Tower, which has been, there's been a lot of white collar criminals living in Trump Tower. Many of them have been arrested. Many of them have faced some consequences for it. But I mean, that's his property. Trump, what's up? Why is there so much crime tied to the Trump Tower? Why are there so many criminals living in Trump Tower? I'll give you some examples.
One could say it's crime infested.
It seems to be crime infested. It seems to be crime infested. So, hat tip to the wonderful gentleman who put this thread together on Twitter, and we're gonna share his tweets right now. So let's go to the first one. Representative Elijah Cummings, on the subject of crime infested, a thread. Paul Manafort, former Trump campaign chairman, owned and lived in a condo on the 43rd floor of Trump Tower, currently in prison for money laundering, bank fraud, tax fraud, witness tampering, and conspiracy against the United States. Zeddy is the individual who's putting this thread together. Let's go to the next one. By the way, I didn't even include all of his tweets.
No,
it's a very long thread.
It's spectacular.
Heli Namad owns the entire 51st floor of Trump Tower, pleaded guilty and received 12-month prison sentence in 2014 for operating an illegal multi-million-dollar gambling business out of Trump Tower. Crime infested.
Yeah.
Case tied to notorious Russian mafia boss of all bosses. That's just another example. Let's give you some more. Vadim Trincher, former condo owner on the 63rd floor of Trump Tower, mastermind of Trump Tower gambling ring with Namad, 5 years in federal prison and $20 million in asset forfeiture for racketeering. And then he had to correct that tweet. It's a small correction. Correction to this tweet, Ivankov hid out in Trump Tower on 5th Avenue, not Trump Tower Moscow. Trump Tower Moscow is the unrealized project of that Trump pursued with the Russian government during the Trump campaign, then lied about it. And I mean, the list goes on and on. I'm not gonna read through every single one of them, but if you want, we can just show you as we continue having this conversation. And please check out the thread, because it is very detailed. And it's not just about what happened in Trump Tower, it's about crimes that Trump committed himself, including inflating his assets in order to obtain loans, which is fraud, deflating his assets in order to save on his taxes, which is tax fraud, using his own charitable foundation to enrich himself. I mean, the list goes on and on. Trump University, which defrauded these students, he had to pay a $25 million settlement as a result of that. I mean, this man is the definition, the epitome of crime, and he's going around arguing that other people are stealing or other people are behind crime in America. No, you're behind crime in America. I mean, he's breaking the law at the border right now and still separating children at the border from their parents.
And unfortunately, he didn't invent this rhetoric that crime only matters when it's poor people. He just gets to swim in it, and he got to swim in it and just like let it just wash all over him all the way to the White House. But yeah, the problems, there's so much crime that the feds have now started looking into specifically these huge purchases of fancy condos and apartments in New York City because there is so much crime behind a lot of these purchases.
I mean, I think
it's wild, right?
If you go to any luxury condo building in Midtown Manhattan is probably just like just a hothouse of white collar criminals from all over the world. I mean, from this thread, just seeing in Trump Tower, the baby Doc Duvalier had a condo in Trump Tower. The butcher of Haiti, had a condo. Oh my God, like it's just like it was like a cornucopia of the worst people on earth, all of them. But I mean, again, like it's probably true of Trump Tower in Midtown Manhattan, as it is true of like almost any luxury condo in Midtown Manhattan. Just infested with white collar criminals all over the place.
R. Kelly was living at Trump Tower in Chicago.
He had like women. He was holding women in the condo in Trump Tower.
Yeah, and that condo specifically that Baby Doc owned, I think it has like a long history of really shady ownership. It's a really fascinating. I feel like
there should be a documentary on it.
There should be
on Baby Doc.
Yes, it's just. You would
all
think
the FIFA criminals were there. Chuck Blazer, who was the American guy who went to jail for the FIFA scandal, he had 2 condos, one for himself and one for all his cats. That was a very famous story from a few years ago.
You would think like the man who
cats.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, just a whole apartment just for his cats.
That's ridiculous. You would think the man who is just so tough on crime, he just hates crime. He just cannot stand anything anywhere that there is crime. Would at the very least be like, you know what, y'all got to stop paying for these in cash.
Yeah.
At the least.
Right, I mean,
something's up. We can't, at the very least, because I don't like crime. And it's not gonna happen under my house.
I would love to ask him if he felt this negative reaction to crime when he made illegal hush money payments to porn stars he was sleeping with. The hush money payments right before the election. I don't know. How did he feel about that crime? I mean, come on, he's a criminal.
Right, because
he's a criminal.
Guess who else owned an apartment in Trump Tower? His former lawyer.
Michael Cohen, yeah, he is.
There's so many. I mean, again, please go check out that thread. I love how it's just a focus on a building that literally has Trump's name on it, and it's crime infested.
And can you imagine if there was a building where a whole bunch of black criminals were known and they all lived, and they would have that place condemned. It could look like the Taj Mahal, and they would have it condemned, knocked down.
Anyone who's not in a position of power gets treated very differently from our justice system. And I think what we're seeing with Trump right now is the embodiment of the two-tier justice system and the inaction by Democrats in Congress. Like, let's keep it real. It is infuriating. Absolutely.
I mean, on the border, on this, it's just like, it's infuriating. We have no opposition party, and we're allowing a lawless administration to just do whatever they want. It's crazy.
We got to take a break. When we come back, we have a story about suburban women souring on Donald Trump. We'll give you some of their quotes and more.